I'll be at the middle of all that, and I'm not looking forward to it one bit. Now, the disease, manic depression, means whom you most love, the disease makes you show hatred for. And he said, from her behavior, it's obvious she must love me to death.
In a highly vulnerable state, Vivien arrived to a bank of newspaper reporters and photographers. She was sent to hospital and given ECT, in which electric currents are sent through the body. She was to suffer the treatment many more times.
There were times when she would literally go on stage, and under the stage makeup there would be burn marks on the side of her head, and it's completely grotesque. Now, of course, these things can be controlled by lithium, and by and large, manic depressives don't go through anything like what she went through.
I went to see her when she'd recovered, and she just said, "Oh, Colin, it's so nice when it's over." That was the only time she really ever referred to it, because, of course, when it was building up, although she knew it, she couldn't control it.
Back in England, Vivien continued her affair with Peter Finch.
He came down to Notley, the terrible Finch, yes. I never liked him. I was outraged having an affair with Vivien. It was absolutely horrendous. He was very amusing. He told a good story, good raconteur, fulfilled Vivien's needs. She was a very demanding lady. And when Larry was acting and burning up energy, he didn't always have a great deal of energy left. And she needed it.
In 1957, the Oliviers toured Eastern Europe with Titus Andronicus. Colin Clark was the stage manager and Vivien's chaperone.
She came along on the Titus Andronicus tour rather for the ride, and she thoroughly enjoyed herself. She was the most sought-after guest in all the cities we went to, Paris and Vienna and Venice. And she had a full social life, and by bad luck, one of her cycles of mental ill health was coming round. So she started to go pretty crazy, really. When we went to Yugoslavia, Vivien's mental problems were coming to a crisis point, and she really could hardly get onto stage. She was so disturbed and so sort of confused. And she loved Yugoslavia, she decided, and she didn't want to leave it. So when time came to leave, she wouldn't get on the train. And I suppose we spent about 20 minutes while the train was held up. And in the end, the police chief, he just picked her up and plonked her on the train. And she went, pow, and she socked him right in the eye. Gave him a great big shiner.
Although they presented a united front to their public, the Olivier marriage was a sham.
I remember going up this weekend. We were having afternoon tea, and Olivier came in. He was leaving. You know, he was coming. He'd come to collect something, and it was like being in a mortuary with the fridge door open. You know, you really felt you were in the presence of corpses, his and hers, the corpse of what had been for 10 years idyllic.
In 1960, Vivien was back in America performing in Jewel of Angels. She rang her favourite journalist, David Lewin, in a state.
I said, "Vivien, it must be pretty important." She said, "Yeah, it is. I've just had this letter from Larry," and she produced, and I'll never forget it. It was in Larry's handwriting, and it said, "Dear Vivien, I am bored with the legend of the O's." I said, "What are you going to do?" She said, "I'm going to leave it. I don't know what Larry boy thinks he's doing, but if he feels like this in a month's time, then I'll give him the divorce he wants."
Larry had started an affair with Joan Plowright, who he married in 1961. Vivien became involved with an actor, Jack Merivale. They had known each other for years, and Jack was a willing protector.
He was a wonderful companion, very handsome, nice fellow. He didn't have very much energy. She once said to me, he's one of those long, pale green things that always spends half the day asleep. It's a bit cruel.
Vivien and Jack set up home together in Eaton Square in Belgravia. She went on to produce great performances in films like The Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone, the story of a middle-aged woman who falls for a young gigolo, played by Warren Beatty.
Vivien was using film almost as therapy by that time. Mrs. Stone is passing through the middle age of the emotions. Vivien Leigh herself was passing through the middle age of the emotions, and for the first time in her life was without her great partner, Laurence Olivier. So again, something of Vivien's strange mental state entered into her performance as Karen Stone.
In the spring of 1967, tuberculosis, Vivien's old ghost, returned to haunt her. Her secretary, Rosemary Geddes, was concerned that she wasn't looking after herself.
She started to cough a lot, you know, but of course she was always afraid of it coming back and didn't want to go to the doctors for ages. And then in the end, she was persuaded to go, and her lungs were x-rayed and she was found to have another flare-up of the tuberculosis. And the doctor advised that she went into hospital, but she wouldn't go. She didn't want to go. She got up and walked around. She was supposed to be in bed most of the time, but she did get up and walk around a lot. And I could see she wasn't getting any better.
On July the 7th, 1967, at the age of 53, she was found dead in her bedroom. Olivier was among the first to be called. Years later, his son found him watching Vivien on film.
He saw on television late one night Vivien in Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone, and I was staying with him at the time. And he was in such a state of tears. He couldn't sleep at all, and in the day later he was still in tears, and oh God, what could have gone wrong? She was so talented as an actress and so beautiful, and that voice, I'd forgotten how lovely her voice was. She was the love of his life, there's no question.
I wasn't altogether surprised when I heard that Vivien had died. I'd seen her quite recently. I'd been over to where she and Jack Marivaux were living. He'd looked after Vivien for many years and been very good at looking after her. But I rather sensed he'd got bored with that. Vivien had realised that. I got the impression that she felt, that's it. Le rideau est tombé. The curtain has fallen now. Time to go. Time to get off the stage.
Why not turn out the lights when there's nothing more to be seen?